So welcome, everyone. We're ready to begin our morning session of this, the 31st meeting of Mind and Life. This morning's exploration is focused through the medium of interreligious dialogue on how religions can be a source of change and positive how religions can be a source of change, positive change in the world today. And His Holiness has been a frequent participant in interreligious dialogue. And I would appreciate if you would open this session, Your Holiness, with some words about the value of interreligious dialogue and also the role of religion in today's world.
Indeed. Indeed. I feel great honor having this opportunity and this topic. One, my commitment as a Buddhist monk is a religious harmony. Try to build genuine harmony among different traditions. There is a solid basis make harmony. Firstly, all major religious traditions. I think one ancient religion from Persia, that's Zoroastrian. Now that follower, that practitioner, very small number, but still in Bombay area, the population less than 100,000. No fear. They very, very peacefully. And I think that from that small community, I say the Indians are also there in the society, some businessmen, some army personnel, come from that small community. So India, firstly, I mean, this is Zoroastrian, then I think Judaism and Christian and Islam, these from outside. So in any way, all these major religious traditions and many different non-Buddhist traditions of India, they all carry same message of love. And then, with practice of love, I say seriously, you also need the practice of tolerance, practice of forgiveness, practice of self-discipline. All religion talking using these practice. So that's the basis of harmony. And then, certainly, philosophical field and different concept. There are different concepts, you see, different sort of philosophical views. I think basically, the theistic religion their main sort of concept is creator. And among Indian religion, one part of Sankhya philosophy, Sankhya tradition, one Jain tradition, the Buddhist tradition, these three, no concept of creator, but rather self-creation. So in the philosophical views, there are differences. And between those who say theistic religion, Islam, Christian, Islam, one Allah, Christianity, Trinity. There are some differences. Then within Buddhism, there are four, I think yesterday also I mentioned, four major different schools of thought. Vivashek, Sautantik, Chittamantra, and Madhyamika. Then these major four, also the different school of thought, and different sub-schools. Also, you see there are many. For example, Vivashek, 18 different sort of today. I don't know, traditional school of thought, I don't know. So Tibetan tradition, or monk, you see, according Savasiddhavajan, Mula Savasiddhavajan. In Thailand, Burma, Sri Lanka, these Theravada tradition. And in China, Dhammagupta tradition. So there are four divided, 18 more Kasukta. Do you know?
In a smaller form. Yeah.
Smaller form, four different sort of tradition. Like that. So the different philosophical views, different tradition or different concept is necessary in order to pursue practice of love, forgiveness. For example, the concept of creator. Oh, wonderful. We all created by one God. That God, infinite love. So this very life created by God. So that concept gives us feeling of very close intimacy with God. And this very life created by God, so like our Father. So the Father, what kind of Father? A Father, angry Father, that's difficult. But Father, infinite love. So then, it automatically brings us conviction. Oh, I am son of such God. So I have the potential, some kind of genes from our Father, God. So very powerful, very powerful. Then, non-theistic religion, Jainism, I think strictly special sort of emphasis, non-violence and respect all life. And Jainism, according to Jain practitioner, according to Jainism, very, very strict vegetarian sort of diet. Compare that, we Buddhists, I think too much liberal. But he exception, he like Jain. But he eat a lot of cheese. No. Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Oh, wonderful. So Jainism, and also in Buddhism, very much emphasis the non-violence. Reason, self-creation. All your sort of experience or kasota, I mean, event, right? So that Maumbe Dunum.
All your aspirations now.
Entirely depend on yourself. If you behave well, you get benefit. If you do not practice the compassionate work, you will get negative consequences. So everything depends on yourself, no other. So that also is very good. So among humanity, I think last more than 2,000 years, these sort of founders come. And then different location, because of different location, you see different lifestyle. Some are hot, some are cold, some area, a lot of vegetable, some are less, like that. So therefore, you see different sort of mental disposition, also obviously there. So therefore, different philosophy is necessary. Different concept is necessary. In order to promote conviction about value of love, compassion. So that's the basis of our harmony or unity. Then cultural aspect. Now, I usually say telling three aspects of any religion, any major religious tradition. One aspect, religion. That is practice of love. All same, 100% same. Nowadays, since September 11th, I'm defending Islam. Islam teaching, Muhammad teaching, and Quran. There are sort of the sentences, you see, we must respect others' well-being, others' sort of right. And genuine Islam practitioner, if he or she creates some bloodshed, then reality no longer Islam practitioner. And the very meaning of so you see, these recent months, I expressing when I met some media people or some interview, I'm telling some terrorist. Usually, you see, we use the word Islam terrorist or even Buddhist terrorist. It is a wrong word, because wrong has the sentence. Actually, you see, individual who once was involved because of the terrorism is no longer Islam practitioner, no longer Buddhist practitioner. So it should make clear, terrorist should not mix with Buddhist terrorist or Islam terrorist, like that. So therefore, the very meaning of jihad is not harming other, but you see, combat with your own destructive emotion. That's the real meaning of jihad. Firstly, I learned that from my Indian Muslim friend. Then later in New York, I discussed with one professor, Islam professor. So he mentioned that, confirmed that. So therefore, the all major religious tradition, you see, carry same practice, love. So then second part, philosophy. There are, as I mentioned earlier, different philosophical thinkings, philosophical view. That's necessary. Even I think one restaurant, you see, from breakfast to dinner, always is the same dish, then I think customer will be less and less and less. More variety, then more people come. Similarly, in different concept, different philosophical views, all aiming to strengthening conviction about practice of love. Use different sort of philosophical views is more useful for variety of people. Therefore, Buddha himself is taught different philosophical views. Like that. Then third aspect is cultural aspect. Cultural aspect, I think very, very related with this existing society sort of, habit. Some of my friends in India, they told me, when Jain master come, at that time, around that period, a lot of animal sacrifice. So because of that circumstances, the Jain master Mahavira special emphasis about vegetarianism. After Jain master, I think 30, 40 years, Buddha come, also is an emphasis on these things. And then I have, you see, I have the view in Islam, in Saudi Arabia or this area, the people's lifestyle more or less nomadic. So you see, people goes here and there like that. No proper rule. So therefore, in Quran, is some special emphasis about Sharia law in order to, because of that, put discipline to people. So the circumstances, and then, frankly speaking, including Dalai Lama institution, there are some sort of influence from the existing feudal system. So I voluntarily, 2011, retired from sort of dual responsibility, spiritual as well as temporary. And then not only myself retired, but also 4-century-old tradition, Dalai Lama institution automatically become head of both temporal and spirituality. Now that ceased. Voluntarily, happily, proudly. Because such practice is very much linked with feudal system. The feudal system, outdated. Now, everybody enjoying democratic system. It's wonderful. Although democratic system also is sometimes, I think, much depend on politicians. Sometimes democracy also is a little bit complicated. But however, basically, democratic system is the best system. So that I usually call habit or cultural aspect. So in India, caste system, very bad. These, I think, ruling elite, because in order to rule, they create certain sort of concept, or the working class people. You are due to karma or due to some creator, you see, you are low. You have no right. So elite people have certain right. So I think in Russian Revolution, French Revolution, I think the elite people, in order to keep their power, their absolute power, they use religion. So therefore French Revolution, very much against religion. And the Russian Bolshevik Revolution also, not against religion. Impossible. What is religion? Love. Nobody against the love. But the system of the religion. Therefore, you see, cultural aspect sometimes we need some sort of modification like that. So there is a real possibility, religious harmony. India is a good example. So including Zoroastrian, India, all world major religious traditions lived together over 2,000 years. So, therefore, you see, India is a living example over a billion populated nation. Religious tolerance is possible. Then why not at the rest of the world? So therefore, with sort of full conviction, if we make effort at the first step, personal contact, then reach out to each other. I am seriously thinking, you see, try to reach out those more fundamentalist Muslim, and as well as even those Buddhist. They are human beings. When they are young, so they are normal human beings. Eventually, circumstances create such things. So the proper way to change that, reach out, consider as a human brothers, sisters, and talk through friendship. You can change, not by force. So that's my one commitment. Till my death, I committed that. Whether success or not, depends on other people. So more and more people now in India and also in Europe, in America, more and more people now really supporting me or showing interest. So like that. So I think different religious tradition over 2,000 years, it happened. And today, I think millions of people get inspiration from these different traditions. So in the future, at least another few centuries, you see, these will remain. So then, sometimes I sort of frankly telling people, Muslim population about 1 billion, a Christian also about 1 billion, and Buddhist now in China, I think big number, 400 millions. So the rest Buddhist country maybe 2 to 300 millions maybe. And then Hindu, perhaps 600 millions. So these major religious traditions, you see, will remain. No one can eliminate other one. So it is fact, whether you like it or not, these different traditions will remain. Then much better, remain happily, friendly, mutual respect, mutual learning. You see, here we need the use of our common sense with wider perspective. Then religious harmony is very, very possible. Like that. So one of my weakness, once my mouth open, then blah, 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 like that. So I must, confess my weakness, so I will stop now here.
Thank you, Your Holiness. I want to introduce Pauline Tangyoria, who comes from the land of the long white cloud. and who will carry for us the spirit not only of the people of New Zealand, but as well women, and speaking for the indigenous peoples of this earth. So Pauline.
He tangita titi, he tangita tau. Nā mihi tuatahi, nana me katoa. Te tātou mati haere, haere, haere. Te tangata whenua tēnā koe. Tēnā koe te rangatira for holiness. Tēnā koe mahini mā, rangatira mā. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. In the language of my people, I first acknowledged all the passing of all the people who have gone before us, and that I have gone in this short time. I've acknowledged His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, and all of you who have attended today. And in the audience, I believe we have one of our whanaunga, one of our relations from home, Ngātai, tēnā koe, tēnā koe. Power is given to all of us to use for good or evil. Sadly to say, as I sit here today, I see the power of the multinationals who are invading in India. In the words of Vandana Shiva, they wish to take away the natural life of the seeds of the ground, of Mother Earth, so that the people in her area will not be able to grow naturally the seeds. Monsanto is coming into her country, and they're genetically engineering seeds, which is not what the Creator has asked of us to do. When I think of the women and the children and the men in the upper mountains of Colombia, the indigenous peoples are threatened with a dam to be put up, and their sacred sites, and their land being taken from them for these dams. When we look at the Latin American countries, we are suffering. And in Brasilia, north of Brasilia, the dams that are going in, and the indigenous women and children and men who are lining up to stop these dams, because to take away the natural running water of the rivers is to take the heart of the peoples of that land. We think of the peoples that are in the mountains in Thailand, the women and children who are put at risk by the wars that are in those mountaintops. The women and children and the men in Australia, the Aboriginal people, who have been there for 60 million years, and they are in danger of being wiped out by multinational mining on their lands. All these things have brought together the indigenous burdens which are being carried, but the power of their belief in the Creator is very important for indigenous peoples, because the spirit of the land is them and they are the land. The spirit of the waterways is part of them and they are the water. The water gives life to all of us. When we sit in the mother's womb, the water protects that child, and when that child comes, the water replenishes the land. So when we think of indigenous peoples, we think of the caring that they give and the responsibility they hold for the environment. If we don't look after the environment, we are no more peoples of the land, of the spirit of the Creator. Because in creation, the spirit which is given to each and every one of us is very important to hold fast. In our land, we call it the wairua of the spirit, which makes us who we are, and that we must always retain within us. The languages of the different indigenous peoples are being wiped out. And this is sad because within the language of our peoples throughout the world, indigenous peoples have their storytelling, they have their prayers, and they have their songs, which makes them the whole person and not just another group of people. We cannot allow this to continue. So when we talk about the power and to care, Indigenous people's life from the beginning to the end is one of caring in a community. Decisions are made within community. They're not made in isolation. And the community is the one who nourishes and nurtures that child, goes from family to family and safely in villages. But this is being threatened today by outside influences. And it is sad to see these outside influences taking priority. Even it's very hard for Indigenous peoples to continue that walk and that pathway that they are born into because the pressure of the outside world. And non-Indigenous peoples, we hope, will understand that Indigenous peoples in this day and age must walk two pathways, not with anger or disagreement, but they are trying to understand the pathway of the European and the pathway they know, which is theirs or by creation. When in my travels and I look at the women and men and children of the Sahara, they have lost their land. They are living in the desert because of the greed. We must remember those people. Those people of the Western Sahara are suffering. The people in African countries are suffering through the greed of the oils. We think of the Latoka people in America who are suffering at this time because the land is being taken by a multinational company. All these things we must put into our basket and offer up in prayer that these will be resolved at some stage. We think of the Tibetan children who went over the mountains and their land being lost. What are we doing for these people? We are a community, a global community, but we must think of those others who have not that power in which to remain within their land and be who they are as the Creator created us. So today, it is not with anger or hurt that my voice is being put out on behalf of Indigenous peoples. It is because we love all peoples. We are created to be the guardians of the universe. And if we cannot practice this, then the world will die. The birds will stop singing. The bees will not be there because the flowers in the bush will not flower anymore. So all these things are very important in the constraint of today's world. We also have to remember that today's world is a world of, I don't know what you call it, but I think it's IT. I'm not an IT expert, but I see people with these computers and things, and they're always sitting there with them. And my little 3-year-old came to visit one Christmas recently, and he had never climbed a tree because he lives in the city. And I said, "Here is your tree, climb it." He said, "How?" I said, "Put one foot on top of the other." Now that boy came back last Christmas. He said, Nanny, I have to climb my tree one branch higher to get to the sky. And that was beautiful to hear him say that. And at night time, when he sleeps with me, and he looks out the window, I wake him up and I say, Haramai Moko, come my grandson, look at the sky. And he sees 1 billion stars. And he said, what are those, Nanny? And I said, those are the stars of our ancestors. And, you know, we should do this more often with our children, tell them our stories of our ancestors. Because without these stories, where would we be in another 100 years' time? Plugging away on the computer? They don't tell the story. It is what the eye sees and the heart feels. So to those parents and grandparents out there, wake your children up in the middle of the night. Let them go and be a part of the Creator's creation, because without that, they will not ever feel what it is to be a part of the land, to be part of the universe. Thank you.
Auntie's just asked to sing a waiata. We usually finish our speech with a song, with a waiata, a short song, Māori song.
So stand. Stand.
Te aroha, te whakapono, me rangi Māori e, tātou e. That means for all of you, we bless you and we wish you well. And
thank you, grandmother. So now we want to hear from our good friend Matu Ricard, who many of you know as a friend to His Holiness, a friend to many of us, a humanitarian, a photographer, a writer, and a contemplative, and someone who speaks also about the suffering on this earth and what it is to live a life of principled compassion. So, Mathieu.
So, first of all, I'm a most humble student of His Holiness, and it's always very odd in this kind of panels when I have to say a few words about Buddhism. It seems like lighting a match in bright daytime. But somehow, I feel each time I have to come pass an exam or something like that. And story about Pauline about the tree reminds me that recently I went to countryside in the east of France, and there was a big tree filled with cherries just above the road. And they say, oh, when we were kids, all the cherries would have been picked up by the kids. And they say, children don't climb trees anymore. And I felt they are all in front of their machines or something. So that's a fact. We are somehow disconnected with nature. So that's just a small remark. So, from perspective of Buddhism, how can we say a few words about the relation between power and care? So first of all, if we were to summarize the very essence of Buddhism, I think it would be the union of wisdom and compassion. So wisdom is about understanding the nature of reality, and then compassion is like boundless compassion for those beings who, through ignorance, not recognizing the way things are, suffer endlessly. So it's only when wisdom and compassion are firmly established that then we can think of growing power and using it. Because then power will be used with the right motivation and for the right purpose. That is, to bring as much well-being as possible to all sentient beings and freedom from suffering and the cause of suffering. So then power suddenly becomes meaningful. And the reason why we will actually follow the Buddhist path, there's a very important concept called bodhicitta, which can be explained as the altruistic wish to achieve enlightenment in order to gain the capacity to free all beings from suffering. It begins with the acknowledgement that right now we can't even deal with our own confusion, with our own mess. We want happiness, but we do just the opposite that will bring us happiness. So how can we help others? There's an example in the scripture saying it's like a beggar who wants to give a banquet to 100 beggars. No provisions. So we need to do that. So in fact, according to the great vehicle, the purpose of achieving Buddhahood is not just to become a Buddha, which of course is a wonderful thing, but to become a Buddha to carry on the enlightened activities for the benefit of all sentient beings. That's really the goal of achieving Buddhahood. Not just for yourself to feel happy forever or wise and so forth. So within that perspective, it is completely inconceivable to use power to harm, to take revenge, to abuse, to exert power out of sheer arrogance or jealousy or craving or greed, any of those mental states, words and behavior that will cause suffering. So then in that case, power makes sense. Because power as itself is a tool. Tool can be used, like a hammer, can be used to build a house or to destroy the same house. So ethically, power is neutral. It has no moral value by itself. Care, altruism, compassion are not ethically neutral. By nature, unambiguously, they are meant to bring well-being and relieve suffering. So that's a big difference. And so now we see how power can be often misused, and that's why, as Alexandra pointed out yesterday, it has a sort of bad reputation. Why? Because in fact, unfortunately, before exerting power, it is quite rare that people spend enough time to develop wisdom and compassion to use the power in the right way. So as also was said yesterday, power is not only brutal force. Intelligence gives enormous power. And His Holiness has often said that the people who did 9/11, it will be 15 years tomorrow, they were extremely smart to do all that with only a few tools and a few tricks, but that was intelligence used to bring immense destruction. So we human beings have exceptional faculties. Animals can do a certain amount of good and a certain amount of harm, but we are the only one who can do immense good or immense harm. That's clear. And the use of our unique intelligence, when it's brought to dominate others, to abuse others, to oppress others, whether minorities, indigenous people, anywhere in the world where people are in a position of less power and they are abused of those who have more power. A typical example is that how we treat 8 million other species who are co-citizens in this world. This kind of idea that because we are smarter, we could use them wholesale as instrument of furthering our selfish goals. They're just there for either feeding us, entertaining us, or whatever. Of course, we didn't ask their opinion about that. This is a typical use of power that leads today of killing 60 billion land animals every year. That's 6 million every hour. And 1,000 billion sea animals, which is 120 million per hour. This is typically the use of power without any care and compassion. So now yesterday also we heard that it is not that there are other things like compassion or non-violence, and Alexandra gave the example of Gandhi, who display a very strong power to compassion. So we should not ever think that compassion is something kind of weak, for nice goody-goody people, can't achieve anything, and the best solution is to quickly resort to violence to solve the problem. So that's really misleading, and the example of Gandhi is one among many, but it is a clear example. Satyagraha, the fight of Gandhi, is the power of truth. And truth here is not some kind of truth that he heard from the sky, but is the truth of the fight for justice, for freedom, for equality, and so forth. So that has an innate power, and this can become very strong. So non-violence should never be seen as a weakness. Actually, it takes much more courage and guts to stand in front of an armed group or people who are beating them like Gandhi during the Salt March than just go on the roof as a sniper and shoot at people. And so in a way, when His Holiness speaks of non-violence, non-violence toward human beings, non-violence toward the animals, non-violence towards the environment, this is using all the power we can have for the sake of goodness. So we should not see it as, a kind of, yes, sort of weak aspect. And there is this tendency to see that. But then, for example, give the example of Tibet. His Holiness has systematically said Tibetans should not use violence. And some people say, look, no result. But what will be the alternative? To put a few bombs, to blow a few planes? What would that help for the future harmony? So there's no question about that. Now, I remember well in Dharamsala during one of the Mind and Life meetings, this question came and someone said, well, if someone comes with a gun and is going to shoot everybody, are you going to say, oh, let's do dialogue and non-violence? What will you do? So His Holiness said, well, maybe I will shoot him in the foot and then I will come and pet his head. So of course the situation is not always as easy as like that. But when people said, are you not going to do anything if your country is invaded, if there's a genocide and so forth? Yes, of course, we should prevent genocide by all means. But why did we wait for a genocide to burst before doing anything when the forest is in fire? Why didn't we take care of the spark with nonviolence, with dialogue, with speaking to each other? All the genocide, we saw them coming a long time before, and we didn't do anything. So then when the forest is in fire, we say, oh, we have to bomb and send planes and so forth. But because we neglected the other approach. So now, I remember also when we were with Avram, my dear friend, in the Forum Economic of Davos, you find strange things there, like Buddhist monks. And there was a meeting of so-called religious leaders, and Desmond Tutu said, no religion ever could really condone killing. I said, great. Let's make a common declaration. And then everybody looked around and said, there are cultural differences and so forth. Finished. But in Buddhism, there is no excuse for killing. This is the ultimate use of power to suppress life. So really in Buddhism, we make no difference between killing at war and murder. And in fact, from Buddhist perspective, a soldier is fully responsible for those he killed, and a general is responsible for all the killings that happened under his orders. So there is no place in Buddhist teaching for any use of violence participating in war. Yet, of course, I think there has not been any war that was waged in the name of Buddhism, but there are plenty of examples of Buddhist people getting completely crazy and resorting to unspeakable violence. There are many examples in histories. There was the Zen association with the militarism in the 19th century, and during the Second World War with the Zen kamikaze. The Khmer Rouge, where the Red Khmers was actually sort of tied up with the Buddhist institution. In Sri Lanka, the Buddhist institution were siding with the government when oppressing the Tamil, and we know well about the recent oppression of the Rohingya Muslims in the borders of Burma and India. And even although recently the government and the Buddhist community as large has been going against that, still there is a strong sort of feeling animosity against the Muslim. There is absolutely no excuse from Buddhist perspective to do that at all. And when I saw the cover of Time magazine, Killer Monks, I just want to remind that according to Buddhism, anyone who has killed, of course, but who has supported killing or rejoices about a killing is no more a monk instantly. So there's no such thing as a killer monk. There's only killer ex-monks. And this is terrible. So just to end up, I think what is clear is yes, if we have full-fledged compassion, and if we are guided with wisdom and inspired by altruism and compassion, then any amount of power is good because it will use to remove suffering and bring happiness.
Thank you, Mathieu. So, Rabbi, you're an old friend of His Holiness, human rights activist, and somebody who has engaged over the years in many interreligious dialogues. It's important for us now to hear your voice. So I think if you can speak from your seat, that would probably be the easiest. Or maybe Ella, you can change with Rabbi Sundorp so he can be slightly closer to His Holiness.
I don't know.
Yeah, if you would just one seat over, thank you.
Thank you.
Your Holiness, my brother, long-time friend, it is such a joy to celebrate our friendship. We are here not representing something only unique, There is a secret, quiet revolution where people from the different spiritual traditions finally understand that we desperately need each other to achieve our common goal of justice and peace. And so I want to say a short benediction from the Jewish scriptures. When we are together in a unique moment, and we say, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'echianu v'kiyamanu v'higianu lazman hazeh. Blessed art thou, our God, source of all being, who sustained us and kept us alive to reach this moment. Amen. You are so right in pointing to the unity, to the harmony. Interfaith is in the center today. In my life, interfaith has saved my life. Siram, my love, and I. Were babies and saved by the courage of other faith, of Catholic. My foster mother was German born, and this has carried me in my life. Today is Shabbat, our Sabbath. God has put a soul into creation. And we have on Shabbat this extra soul. We plant the future into the present. And we see a world filled with love, filled with compassion. I realize that something extraordinary happened when God decided to create a human being. In Jewish scriptures we say, Na'aseh Adam, let us create the human being. And one of the translations in understanding says God said a plural because he asked the angels, let us create a human being. But the angels said, no, the human being will destroy everything. A human being of free choice. No. So God said, yes. And he called the human being, as it were, when it started, and said, you, human being, and I, God, let us create the human being together. And he took away some of his power to give space to the human being, to be his partner in his creation. And we still are. But it is the most difficult experiment of all time, with all its dangers. Also, God said, let us let us create according to our image. Human beings are our image. It is also plural, because it means that only when we allow everyone in the center of dignity and do not push anyone because of race, because of color, because of sexual orientation, because of anything, only then we constitute together the image of God. And therefore, yes, in Islam and in Judaism and in Christianity, in all of us, it says, he who has saved one human being has saved the world. He who destroys one human being destroys the whole world. How can we blame a people and religion for violence? We all carry in us the rays of light as you say, something of the gene of God. And we retrieve this lost rays of light. And when we do a good deed, we immediately, the ray of lost ray of light comes back to the source, and then peace. So together we are responsible, and we are able to fashion, to restore the world to what God wanted, a world of peace and justice, of power and care. Now the world seems to have two faces. One face is extraordinary. Never in humanity the peoples have gathered together to create the Millennium Development Goals and the Sustainable Goals, and to say that in 14 years' time there will be an end to acute poverty. That is, my friend Pauline is rightly pleading finally. The earth does not belong to one or others. We are all temporary residents, and we have this responsibility. You know, I tell you a very, very short parable, the shortest. There are two men in a boat on the ocean, and one of the men is making a hole in the boat. So the other says, "What are you doing? You're destroying us." So the other said, "Don't worry, I'm only making this hole in my part of the boat."
Great story.
So when yesterday was a day of hope, the planetary boundaries where we flourish, it's our boat, and we can do it. I wonder, can we create together a council of conscience? Because God's name are many names, and amongst them are the power names and the caring names. But we have to help the Security Council to actually be a Security Council by our own council of conscience, of people of religion, people of strength, people in which we humans can put trust. I invite you to be one of the members of the council. Two faces. Because while all this cooperation is there, the refugees are going their way and are welcome. We are speaking in Belgium. Wounded Brussels, healed by a new way of sustenance, not giving up, not letting go, but not to continue with violence, but with peace. How is it possible, those two faces? I believe that we as human beings we have a connection with the spirituality, and I say humanism is included completely. Who are we to exclude anyone? But we, with attachment to this spiritual being, we have to be more powerful. Powerful in the sense of powerful, always tempered by care. We have to be there. When the G20 is together, we should not have to be in Davos, but we have to be in this world. We can be visible in our friendship across religions. It is auspicious day. You know, My brother, as you just said to me, physically we change. But it's the same friendship that started 43 years ago. And I remember that when I spoke then about the struggle of Israel that was in war, and about my feeling that I did not sleep the whole night, that I know about some of your sufferings, and I read, but I've never lost an hour of sleep, I said. And you answered, love your neighbor as yourself is the source of all of us. And I tell you, one day, Jews, Muslims, Israelis, Palestinians, Chinese and Tibetans will love each other. And that then.
Yes. So, Father Thierry, we're
looking for those mysterious glasses.
Yes, but we know. Yeah.
Okay, well, Father Thierry will not be sitting on them. So, Rabbi, if you would change places with Father Thierry, I'd be so grateful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So it brings me a lot of joy to introduce Father Thierry Marie Corot from Paris, who's Dean of the Theologicum at the University of Paris. And I just want to say one thing. It's peace and connection between our religious traditions, but also across the boundary between humans and non-humans in terms of all species on this earth. And I feel like the Beatitudes, which of course are at the heart of Christianity, will reflect that quality of nonviolence that we're addressing today, as Father Rabbi Abraham Sodendorp addressed, Mathieu and Pauline. So welcome, Father Thierry Marie.
Thank you so much, Rosie Joan and Your Holiness. It's a pleasure and a big honor to be with you today, and with Matthew, that I know maybe since 15 years. And you made me the grace, you made me the grace to, when I came to Bercy maybe 12 years ago, where you gave a teaching on Buddhist text, and I came every day to listen to you, and you told me to come on the stage just next to you. And every day you gave me a special hug, if I can say. So thank you, because that gave me a lot of inspiration. And today when I was listening to you at the beginning of this talk, I thought that we have all in hands all the good ideas for the world. We don't need new ideas. Everything is here. Why do we not implement them? why do we not practice all these things for the world? We know what could be a better world. So why are we so oriented to the worst and not to the best? We know that the best is to make this world happy. Happy for all the human beings, for all the sentient beings, for the creations itself, for the nature. So why, when we are able to produce so good ideas for the world, are we also able, even the same, to do the worst? And when I was thinking of power and care, I see how us as religious, we are able to gain authority because we open some doors of happy world. And maybe it's a shame for us, because when we gain authority, the people are giving us power. They want to see us on a stage. They want to see us in habits of religious. They want to see some clerics and to give them life to the clerics, but not for the projects that the clerics are looking for, with the truth, with the love, with the wisdom, with mercy and compassion. So we are a danger for the others. If we don't take care to exercise a critical mind, we must be, us religious, I don't know if leaders is the correct name for me, but religious, to exercise always a critical mind. I think that's one of the keys for the future of the world. And if I am thinking about Christianity, when I see how is done the salvation by Jesus Christ, I was thinking that when we're speaking about care in Jesus, caring is first of all listening and serving. And I like this logo of Mind and Life, when we can see all these people listening the other. There is a mouth in the ear of the others. And I think that our world needs today to listen, only to listen, and not to discuss, to debate. Because when we are in a state of listening, as you are doing now, you are receiving me as I am, without judgment, with compassion, and with love. And so many people need to be listened, only to be listened. Even the more fundamentalist people, radicalist people, most of the time they miss to be listened, to be welcomed, to be received as they are. So with listening and service of the others, we can change the world. We can change the world. And so we can exercise our power, which could be to choose, to decide to love. Choose to decide to love. I don't say to choose love, because of course every one of us chooses love, wants love. It's so easy. But at the same time, what is love? Love is not a feeling or only a feeling. It's first of all a will, a decision to orient our mind, our heart to the others and to receive them as they are. And really to receive and not to give, because often we give after grasping. And so I like, in the Noble Truth, how you as Buddhist, you have seen how one of the main questions of the human being is to be in the grasping, always grasping. When we are to become receiver of the nature, receiver of the others, receiver of the sentient beings. And so, if we decided to love, we know that it's not so easy, but we decided. So we oriented our mind and heart. And when we choose, we enter in the freedom. To choose is to become free. That's why if we were courageous people, we will choose to decide to love. And maybe the world will change. But there is some strong consequences. Because in that case, we could not wait for reciprocity. In other words, when we decide to receive the other as he is, we don't wait to be loved by the other. Because when we love the others, there is no matter. It's done. We are not reflecting on us. That's why if we accept to enter if we accept to enter in this attitude, not waiting reciprocity in love, we could really change the world. So, I have no more to say, and only to say thank you.
Thank you, Brother Thierry Marie. I'm going to, would His Holiness like to say something, or shall we finish with the last presentation? Wait.
Thank you.
So it makes me very happy to introduce Elham Orbit, who has many roles to play in the United States in terms of the sustainable goals, carrying the voices of Libyan women, being part of the UN Global Civil Society Advisory Group, UN High Level Commission, and so on and so forth. You have so many responsibilities. And we decided as an interreligious community to invite Ella to finish the interreligious presentations before we move into dialogue. Not only because she's a woman and a Muslim, but also she carries the future in a particular way. So we're very grateful that you are here.
For having. I was just telling His Holiness that I'm back. I'm his new friend on the panel. So this panel and yesterday, we'd been discussing power and care. And often they are being termed as these mutually exclusive concepts, where they can impact one another, but they are individual in their identities. And for me, the first introduction to power and care, and particularly their intersection with faith, came from my own parents. My mother raised 11 children. My mother and father raised 11 children, of which I am the middle, and the best. Don't tell anyone I told you. My father daily showed sacrifice. He would be at the hospital all day as a doctor. And my mother, if you ever want to see compassion and power and care and justice exemplified, try raising 11 kids, was a daily embodiment of what my faith taught me, of what it means to be just, and of what it means to be loving. And so my introduction to faith was not in a mosque. It was not from a religious scholar. Well, in my opinion, my mother is a religious scholar, so I suppose it was. But it wasn't somebody who is very often amplified in religious circles. And that translates to all women. For a long time, faith has been a very exclusive domain where the leadership is predominantly male. And because of that, I believe, they create policies which are very much in their likeness. Policies which betray a certain cultural and gendered construct, and change the way in which faith plays a role in our world today. We've had a lot of conversations about fundamentalism, and I actually dislike that term because it implies that somehow they are fundamentally of that faith, and I think they're more deviant than they are radical or fundamentalist. Mm-hmm. But I think fundamentalism, or this deviantism, tells us a lot more about our state as a human people than it does about the state of faith. Religion is much like power. It can be neutral. You can use it for the positive or the negative. You can interpret text the way you see fit. You can dehumanize and belittle people, or you can elevate people. And it is based on our interpretation that has resulted in a very conflicted world, where people of different faiths are excluded, where refugees, over 50% of which are children, are not allowed in borders for fear of what they may do in the future. And on the refugee situation, quickly, because it's something that I feel we don't pay enough attention to, is the way in which we have humanized conflict. It's the way in which we have securitized individuals to be representatives of what we most are afraid of or what we most don't like. So it's not the migrants or the refugees we're fearful of, but it's what they might bring. And oftentimes that is anything that does not look or seem like us. And so if we're going to delve deeper into the conversation on deviantism, if we're going to delve deeper into the conversation on extremism, be it Islamic, Buddhist, or otherwise, we have to start asking ourselves what in the structure, in the institutionalization of religion, has allowed for it to be employed in this manner for this long. And I'm going to get a little political here, I apologize. I don't, actually. But I think it's important that we recognize that there are countries that we are allied with that have funded and supported extremism for far too long, that have turned extremists from individuals to organized entities with political and economic power. And we have to recognize that if 50% of people born into faith end up leaving their faith before they turn 18, then while religion can be loving and compassionate and kind, it can also be terrifying and violent. And our interpretation of faith can actually drive people away from it. Our interpretation of faith, our misuse of faith, the employment of faith as a tool for political and economic strength rather than human compassion is something that we do within our faith communities have to address. It is wonderful. It is wonderful and it is encouraged to always see the positive, the silver lining. That's another thing my mother taught me after raising 11 children. But I think if we are going to step into a world where we can actually create interreligious dialogue and where we can all live as harmoniously as you envision, then we have to accept the fact that there is a historical root of a lot of the conflict that exists. We have to accept the fact that, times in our history, like colonization, have forever changed the way in which religion is interpreted in many parts of the world.
Exactly.
They have changed the way in which we look at gender, the way in which we look at race and ethnicity. And while I know everybody likes to say the past is the past, we are the past. We today are our past. And without first recognizing the roots of the conflicts, both within our own faith traditions and among our faiths as they intersect, we won't be able to reach a solution where we can sit and live in harmony and peace. And I'm going to wrap up on the subject that I believe is most important when it comes to religion and religious interpretation, and that is inclusion. And you had mentioned the importance of different perspectives, different platforms. And I think what has lacked in interpretation, why power is misconstrued as a negative, why power is always bombs and bullets, is because power has been deemed in a very masculine way. Because faith has been interpreted in a very masculine way. And so we don't deem compassion and care as a form of power. So we don't deem compassion and care as an inherent form of power. We view it as something separate. And I would argue that they are one and the same. In order for you to truly exemplify power, in order for us to define power, we have to recognize that a key component of it is compassion. A key component of it is care. And like you said, those are no less admirable than being able to shoot a gun. I actually think they are much more admirable. But that without the voices of women, without the voices of minorities, without the voices of indigenous people, without the voices of youth, we are not going to have representative interpretations of faith. We are not going to have representations of faith that are actually applicable in communities and that people can actually translate into their practical lives. So while you create a council of conscience, which I will of course invite myself to, I think a key point on the agenda is how do we take faith from being something in our textbooks, in the Quran, in the Torah, in the Bible? How do we take faith from being something we discuss? How do we take compassion from being something we emphasize, to being applicable in the daily realities of our life, to being something that we can actually translate in a world that is unfortunately exceptionally xenophobic, that is scared most of the time, and that I don't think is very ready for a conversation about how faith can elevate compassion. Thank you.
That's all right. That's okay. Then people may mistake I'm female.
I told him he wears it much better than I do.
What's up?
He wears it better than she does.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Ella, thank you. Your voice was like, went straight to the heart, and straight to the heart of what each of our speakers has talked about. And this is an opportunity for us to enter into dialogue with His Holiness. And first I'd like to see if His Holiness has words of reflection.
I really feel, I think we really have sort of genuine sort of mutual respect and friendship. Recently I was in Ladakh. Ladakhi Muslim and Buddhist, I think, very good relations. And among the Muslim, Shia, Sunni, very, very close relations. So in order to encourage them, of course in the past also, from time to time, I sort of make pilgrimage to a mosque. That's as early as 1975. I start that practice. You see, pay my respect, or almost like pilgrimage, to mosque, church, Hindu temples, and Kasa, Jain, and Kasa, Jul Chisami. Jul Kasa Chisami.
Temple.
Synagogue. Oh, synagogue, yes, synagogue. With that hat. In Muslim temple, there's a white
cap.
So a white cap. So one occasion in Delhi, the famous great sort of ancient mosque there.
Jama Masjid.
What?
Jama Masjid.
So after one sort of meeting with Muslim from different Muslim countries, and then after that, you see, we all went to the mosque, ancient mosque, and I wear that white hat, and with other Muslim, I pray together like this. The next day, many Indian newspaper, you see, show that picture. I a little bit sort of anxious. Oh, what a reaction from some Hindus. But then later, my friend told me, oh, many Hindus really sort of, they appreciate it's a Muslim community, not something isolate, but you see,
bring together.
Bring together. So in any way, at this time in Ladakh, firstly I went as should be, Buddhist temple, and then after that Sunni mosque, then Shia mosque. So we very close friendship. And some of these Muslims, you see, appreciate, you see, my thinking or my sort of talk, my teaching also, like that. So that shows, you see, we have this sort of potential to develop that some kind of oneness of all these different faiths. So if one place is possible, then if we make effort, tirelessly, I think on global level, I think we can achieve that. So we need, I think, I think the real cause, I feel, in India, all these major religious traditions lived together over 2,000 years, beside the homegrown religion and from outside, from Zoroastrianism and Judaism, so on, like that. So the Indian children, from their childhood, they already know there are different religious traditions. And in Malaysia, the Muslim brothers, sisters there, they also usually have some sort of familiar, the other tradition. The large number of Indians there as Hindus, then large number of Chinese, mainly businessmen, these, most of them Buddhist. So, quite familiar. And in some extent, in Indonesia also. So then Arab world, a little bit isolated. So now, I think that's one factor. So therefore, we must reach out in other the isolated, historically isolated Muslim countries. That I think recently, some student from Muslim country, Arabs, and some African state Muslim, you see, some student, they came to see me. One American organization has organized that. It's very bad. I really, so because of the amazed way,
impressed.
Amazed. Some of the young students, they develop the idea we must develop peace. On the spot, some explosions, some of their friend dying or dead. At such moment, they develop determination. We must work hard for peace. I told them, if I'm there, I may run away. These people, you see, on such sort of desperate situation, you see, they not sort of fear like that, determined. We must make effort, bring peace. So, such wonderful young student, some males, some female. I am very much impressed. And I told them, you are not alone. Every sensible human being on this planet with you. I told them. So then I also told, eventually, such meeting in different places, in different African states or Middle East, some sort of Arab countries. They say we must
spread it.
Spread our work. So that also gives me more hope. Younger people. This is such a wonderful sort of enthusiasm. So in any way, I believe there's a constant effort, like ours of this meeting, and then because we carry some other places more often. I think very significant positive result will come, will achieve. So I very much appreciate. So that's what I do.
So we've heard from Rabbi Sotendorf this powerful vision of a council of conscience, and also from Brother Thierry Marie the deep value of listening, of being able to receive the world completely in an open, undefended way. And from Allah, your words of bringing faith forward in integrating, truly integrating power and care. and Mathieu, the integration of wisdom and compassion, which is the Buddhist perspective, and you, Pauline, speaking for women and indigenous people and how we revalue this earth and restore this earth, because we brought so much damage into the world. In essence, speaking to the commitment toward nonviolence. And to, at the end, as Ella brought up, the deep value of addressing issues of structural violence. Not only direct violence and violence toward the environment, but structural violence. The corporations, as Pauline also addressed, that are really feeding the machine of terror and aggression in our world. So this is a beginning. Our relationships are a beginning, but they're also about the future. And we have this opportunity to just touch in for a few moments with a question for His Holiness or for one of the participants up here. But I would like to begin with a question to you, Pauline. And that is about the value of place. Sorry? The value of place in our religions, the value of the earth in our religions, our relationship to place.
Relationship to the planet.
Yes.
Well, Mother Earth.
Sorry. I want to say a few words about indigenous people.
Yeah.
In Canada, at least they use the word First Nation. And then Maori in New Zealand, I really admire. So you keep your own tradition, at the same time, educated, thoroughly modern education. That's wonderful. Whereas in Australia, the indigenous people still remain isolated. That's now, according to today's sort of situation, that's almost like suicide, not good. In the center of Australia, I visited Australia several occasions. Then, I think two years ago, I want to go to the center of Australia, the big rock. I went there and then met some local indigenous people. You see, they do not know how to wash their face. Then, fortunately, one German, with the help of, I think, the federal government, you see, they carry some project for education. So the indigenous people's sort of culture, I think they are life in ancient time, very much rich with nature. And modern society, with the help of technology, sometimes you feel, oh, you can control nature. But this is, I think, wrong perception. Ultimately, we are part of the nature. For our own survival, we must sort of respect nature. So these indigenous people culture, in American Native people, and also I think Japanese, so very much sort of respect nature. That's very good. So today's, I think, world, because of time for technology, in this moment, I think we can learn many useful things from indigenous people, sort of respect nature and their life carry according to the nature. That's
more in harmony.
More harmony with nature. Wonderful. So the way preserve, like the Maori people and also people from Sami land, they keep their tradition, including their dress. You didn't wear your own sort of traditional dress.
Well, I have my kiwi on.
Oh yes, that's right. So, and their language, sing songs, these things, but through modern education. modern technology. That's the proper way. So those Samiland people, they speak Norwegian in Norway at least. I have some sort of familiar in this area. So I really see, because of the feel, that's the proper way to keep your own identity, your own culture with modern education. That's the proper way. And some Latin American people, they're very much concerned about the preservation of their own identity, their own culture, but they prefer isolate. That is almost like a suicide. Will not sort of helpful to preserve their own tradition like that. Then, what is your name?
Pauline.
Pauline.
So some occasion, I suggested you should keep your own traditional name. It is better. I met some Australian indigenous people. They use some English name or something like that, who educated. So education, yes, universal. But your name should keep your own traditional word. Then when you sort of introduce yourself, it's immediately the other person, you see, feel, oh, this is something, that's what the different community or something like that. That are my small suggestions. Okay. That I think better to keep, you see, your name according to your own native language rather than put something here.
That is a tribal mark.
Thank you.
Thank you. That is my tribal marking. That is a tribal tradition in my women. Because I come from a tradition of a matriarchal line. Your Holiness.
Okay. Then another thing, usually I express male dominance. Even among the religion, there are some sort of that kind of practice. Is because, you see, in very, very ancient time, I think a few 100,000 years ago, you see, when the human sort of society, very small, no education, that at that time, no concept of leadership. Everybody work together, and whatever they get, share just equally. And then gradually, because of the population increase, then farming system started. Then you see the concept of my land, my possessions. So then steals or bully, these things happen. Then people, you see, find, oh, we need leadership. Since there is no education, so in order to become leadership, physical strength, so male dominance start from that. Then eventually education comes. Education brings more equal. Now today, we really need a lot of effort for promotion of love and compassion. For that, as someone, you see, yesterday also mentioned, female, biologically, more sensitivity about other suffering. So therefore, at the time, special effort to promote human compassion, human love, the female should take more active role. So sometimes I just feel about 200 nations on this planet. I think majority of these nations' leader eventually become female, then maybe world less violence.
Yes.
So then, So therefore, now I think the time come, we male. They say now, male dominance quite enough. Now we should retire, relax.
Thank you, Your Holiness. So, Your Holiness, thank you for the cue, because I think the last word should be given by the women. And I think it would be wonderful for Pauline to reflect for a moment, and then Ella to reflect for a moment. And so we actually have it as a lived experience where women have the last word. So. Pauline.
I didn't quite hear her question.
Just say something, the last words.
The last word. The last word must be for the future of our children. If we have not the love of Mother Earth, because it's from the earth we came and the earth we return, and if we have no love for Mother Earth and protecting her, then we cannot look for a caring world for the future. Because it's in this future that we have to think about. This young lady over here who spoke, she is the future. She is not the future to come. And if we don't care for Mother Earth, and Mother Sky, and the land and the sea and the forest, where we can go and pray, and we know we can survive in the universe, because the environment does not survive if we destroy it. If we do not care for the universe, then we will not be here. But I know that the power of the love and the caring of you and I together and the rest of the global population will be successful for the youth of tomorrow. God bless you all.
Thank you.
I was going to make a joke about how this isn't the last word. You'll be hearing a lot of me. But I wholeheartedly agree that we need to reconstruct what our definitions of power and care are. And I would argue that it's not simply about being male or female, but rather our understanding about masculinity and femininity are. But in order to do that, I think both within faith and out of faith, we really do have to start challenging a lot of the interpretation, a lot of the understanding, a lot of the rhetoric, a lot of the leadership at times, which have created the existing construct, which lends itself often to manipulation and misuse. And so I think it becomes not about women taking on a more active role, because I think a lot of women want a much more active role and deserve one if we're going based on merit alone. But we also have to challenge the structural inequalities, the structural obstacles and challenges which exist, so that we can actually create a platform where anybody, regardless of gender or race or ethnicity, has equal opportunity. And that, I think, needs to be first and foremost in faith. Thank you.
Thank you, Ella. So His Holiness will offer katas to our friends, our community here. And then we will have a lunch break and reassemble at, what is it?
The wheelchair.
1 o'clock. Is that right?
Yes. Our tradition.
great. Sure.
Ka.
Okay.
Kor. Surbe. Ka. Oh, fine. No need toilet. Need food.
Organisiert der Rollstuhl jetzt? Sie geht